You have to have leaders at the top of Congress so that we can get things done. And there are two basic types of leadership in Congress that I want to talk about. You have constitutional leadership and you have political leadership. They are both examples of men and women trying to get things done in Congress, but one of these groups of leaders has the authority, and one of these groups of leaders has the power. And if we remember the difference between power and authority, authority means they've been told that they're going to be in charge. But power is actually having the ability to be in charge and get things done. So let's take a look at the difference between constitutional leadership and political leadership. Constitutional leadership are basically those positions within Congress that are mandated or listed in the Constitution. There are certain leaders in Congress that we have to have because the Constitution says we have to have them. Political leadership in Congress, on the other hand, are positions that are selected by and created by the political parties. Remember, the Constitution says nothing about political parties. So if the political party is going to create a position, it's not going to be a constitutional position. It's going to be a political position, a position that's created by the political parties. And when we look at the constitutional leadership, there are three basic constitutional leaders in Congress. The Speaker of the House of Representatives will be in charge of the House of Representatives. The President of the Senate, or the Vice President of the United States, is going to be in charge of the Senate. When the Vice President of the United States isn't around, the Constitution says that the President pro tem will be in charge of the Senate. These are positions that the Constitution says has to exist. Now, the Constitution says they have to exist, but just because the Constitution says they exist, if the members of Congress don't choose to follow them or pay any attention to them, those leaders aren't going to have any real power, and their authority is going to be useless. So what we have in Congress are these political positions, the positions that were created by the political parties, and the political parties and the member of Congress have said, these are the people we're really going to follow on a daily basis. And within Congress, the political leadership is made up of the majority and minority leaders and the whips. There's a majority leader in the House. There's a minority leader in the House. There's a majority leader in the Senate, and there's a minority leader in the Senate. And then you have a group of people in the House and the Senate called whips. There's a group of House whips, and there's a group of Senate whips. And let's take a closer look at some of these positions, some of these constitutional positions, and some of these political positions. The first leader in Congress that we need to talk about is the Speaker of the House of Representatives. From the previous slide, we will see that the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives is in fact a constitutional leader because the Constitution says that the leader of the House will be the Speaker. Now, it's very easy to understand that the Speaker will be the constitutional leader, but the Speaker is a unique position in that the Speaker of the House is actually also a political leader. And the reason that we say that the Speaker is a political leader as well is because the Speaker of the House is elected from the membership of the House. In other words, to be Speaker of the House, you have to first be a member of the House of Representatives. And the way it works is that basically on the first day of Congress, the members of the House of Representatives get together, and one of the very first things they do is all 435 of them vote for who they want to be Speaker. And if you have 400 members of the House that are Democrats and 35 that are Republicans, you know that the Speaker is going to come from the majority party. The Speaker of the House always comes from the majority party. So the Speaker is both a constitutional position because the Constitution says it must exist, but it's also a political position because it's really the political parties who decide who the speaker is going to be. When the majority party selects the person to be speaker, they're saying we want this person to be in charge of our party as well as in charge of the House of Representatives. Now, the next position is the President of the Senate. And the President of the Senate, according to the Constitution, is the Vice President of the United States. The Constitution says the Vice President of the United States will be the President of the Senate. But we have to realize that the writers of the Constitution realize that the Vice President would have his own duties that he would be doing most of the time as Vice President. And most of what the Vice President does as the President of the Senate is really kind of official functions. The Vice President will preside over the Senate during the State of the Union address. The Vice President of the United States acts as the President of the Senate when he swears in new members of the Senate. The only real official duty that the Vice President has as it relates to the United States Senate is the Vice President gets to vote if there's a tie. But most of the time, the Vice President is out doing his own job. He's not in the Senate on a day-to-day basis. So since they realized that, what they did in writing the Constitution is they created a second position within the Senate called the President Pro Tem. And early on in the history of the United States Senate, the President Pro Tem was a powerful position. The President Pro Tem actually presided over the Senate, made major decisions about how the Senate would operate. But as time progressed, the President Pro Tem has become really more of a ceremonial position with no real power. The President Pro Tem of the Senate today is traditionally the person from the majority party that has been in the Senate the longest. There's really very little power that the President Pro Tem has today. But yet, there still has to be a President Pro Tem because the Constitution says there will be. So we're basically looking at three different constitutional positions in Congress. The Speaker of the House is a constitutional position. The Vice President of the United States is a constitutional position. In the Senate, we call him the President of the Senate. And the President Pro Tem of the Senate is a constitutional position. Now, there are also a series of political leaders. And as I said before, these political leaders are selected by the parties. The parties, for the most part, created these political leadership positions. At some point, the members of the House and the Senate decided we want to create positions known as majority leader and minority leader. And when we talk about majority and minority, we're talking about the majority leader comes from the majority party, and the minority leader comes from the minority party. So the majority leader in the Senate is the person who's been elected by the majority party, and that person, since they have the support of the majority party, is going to basically be the day-to-day leader of the Senate. Now, in the Senate, there's also a minority party, and the members of the minority party have to be organized. So they select a person to be their leader, and we call them the minority leader. So there's a majority leader in the House and a minority leader in the House. There's a majority leader in the Senate and a minority leader in the Senate. Those people are political positions. Now, I need to go back real quick to the Speaker of the House, because in the House of Representatives, the majority party has two leaders. They have the Speaker of the House, who, remember I said, is kind of a political position. And the majority party in the House also has what they call a majority leader. And the reason that there are two leaders in the House of Representatives from the majority party is because the Speaker is technically a constitutional position. And if the Speaker is asked to do political things, we may view that as kind of a negative, because as the constitutional leader of the House, he or she is really supposed to be looking out for the well-being of the country, not his or her political party. So what the majority party in the House of Representatives does is they elect the Speaker and then elect a majority leader. And that majority leader is, in the House of Representatives, is the one that's asked to go out and do the partisan or the political things. For example, in the House of Representatives, if the Democrats in the majority and the Republicans are doing something that the Democrats don't like, they don't send the Speaker of the House out to attack the minority party. They'll send the majority leader, because the majority leader is simply a political position. We expect that person to act in a partisan way because they're elected by their party. The Speaker of the House is technically elected through a vote of the whole House of Representatives, and he or she is expected to be above the political fray. And we know in reality, behind closed doors, the leader of the majority party in the House is going to be the Speaker. Now, the last thing